Hello. I have spent a lot of time contemplating this topic, and I decided I wanted to share it with other people uh, in hopes that they would glean some things and, maybe it can answer some questions someone else might have or have had. I'd like to say at the outset that I'm not an expert in any of these matters. I took to reading about them. I observed certain things in our everyday world that kind of led me to ask questions, why things are the way they are in news and media, politics, pop culture, movies, music, and things of that nature. And it led me down a bit of a rabbit hole. As you can see, I've got several tabs open, and I want to go through here and read some things for you, and maybe we can learn some things. And I want to know what all this means. And I'm not particularly a good speaker, so I'll just get right into it. Try not to take up too much of your time, but there is a lot of reading to do. So this first thing that I want to talk about is called, it's a paper done by the Catholic Historical Review, Moshe Sluhovsky, very interesting name, Moshe there. St. Ignatius of Loyola's Spiritual Exercises and Their Contribution to Modern Introspective Subjectivity, published on October 2013. Let's see, abstract. The author discusses St. Ignatius of Loyola's spiritual exercises in their 16th century context. He argues that Ignatius introduced a number of technical changes to the late medieval tradition of undertaking spiritual exercises, and that these changes were of utmost importance. They widened significantly the practitioner's control over his or her spiritual growth and the access of the laity to spiritual exercises and introspective technique. But due to the democratization impulse, they also ignited fear among conservative theologians who recognized accurately that resemblances between Ignatius' spiritual exercises and an allumbradismo, this led to a dramatic curtailment of the exercise's democratic potential in the last years of the 16th century. So this word, allumbradismo, we're going to learn what this word means. This is the first term that we're going to look at. But first, a little bit of backstory on these spiritual exercises. If you don't know, Ignatius of Loyola is the founder, he's the developer of these spiritual exercises that he compiled in the 1520s and 1530s, but he's also the founder of the Society of Jesus, otherwise known as the Jesuits. So, just briefly here, keywords: Ignatius of Loyola, saint, introspection, spiritual exercises, lay spirituality, and modern subjectivity. The tradition of spiritual exercises of taking care of oneself, cura sui espius, by means of either intellectual or spiritual self-improvement, is older than the Church itself. Has been established, there was also very little in the content of the specific exercises and meditations, including Ignatius of Loyola's spiritual exercises, compiled in 1520 to 1530s, first printed edition in 1548, that was new or original. Loyola's exercises were shaped to a very large degree by Ludolf of Saxony's Vita Christi, written before 1378, with many printed editions since 1474, which promoted the notion that activation of the imagination by means of meditative prayer intensifies the effective life of the soul and enhances self-examination, as well as by Thomas A. Kempis's Imitatio Christi, 1420. In other writings by followers of the Devotio Moderna, Loyola was influenced by his reading of Abbot Garcia Jimenez de Cisnero. I'm not good with these Spanish pronunciations. Ejercitario de la Vida Espiritual, 1500, or more likely an abbreviated version of this collection, the Compendio Breve de Ejercicios Espirituales, 1520. Whoops. But only surviving in its 1555 edition. Cisneros' exercises themselves were shaped by modern devotion exercises by Desiderius Erasmus's Enchiridion Militis Christiani, but the vocabulary and the order of Loyola's exercises follows Cisneros' text closely, whereas Loyola himself credited the imitation of Christ with igniting this conversation. He even assigned the Imitation of Christ as mandatory reading for Jesuit novices who were required to carry the text with them at all times. For Loyola, then, there was no contradiction or even tension between the monistic spiritual and the apostolic ministerial missions of the Jesuits, a point worth emphasizing because of their latter developments that will be discussed in due course. The content of Loyola's spiritual exercises could be therefore regarded as nothing but a compilation of pre-existing meditations for self-cultivation and self-actualization as a devout Christian, or, to use Ignatius' own vocabulary, to overcome oneself, and finding more readily what one desires. As such, they could be read as one element in a much wider attempt carried out in early modern Europe by state and church together to impose new norms of self-control and self-discipline, a process advanced and analyzed by, among others, Norbert Elias, Michael Foucault, Wolfgang Reinhard, and Adriano Prosperi, further discussed below. But this new view, although literally accurate in the sense that Loyola's goal is to enhance adherence to the Church, ignores three significant modifications introduced by Loyola into the ancient and late medieval practices of spiritual exercises. Modifications that had important psychological, pedagogical, spiritual, and sociocultural implications. These changes, namely a transition from reading exercises alone to listening to them as they are being read aloud, the central role of a spiritual director as a mediator between text and practitioner, and the availability of spiritual exercises of introspection and spiritual growth to all believers, regardless of their societal status, are the topics for this article. We're not going to read this whole article. It's pretty lengthy, and we've got a lot to cover. Let's see. I want to make sure I made all the points I wanted to make in here. These practical and technical aspects, however, were of crucial importance both for the diffusion and opposition of the exercises and will be addressed later. At issue were major concerns of the young order itself. How should it combine its mission to sanctify the world with its members' personal goals of sanctifying themselves? What exactly should be the vocation of the Society of Jesus? But equally important at issue were the most profound concerns of early modern Catholicism. Who has or ought to have access to divine illumination? What is the role of the human will in spiritual experiences, and should lay people interact with the divine without priestly meditation or priestly mediation? These concerns were not new, of course, but acquired a new and urgent importance in the first half of the 16th century, a half-century that opened with the Alumbrادismo phenomenon in Castile and terminated with the Peace of Augsburg and the recognition of the Catholic Church that proponents of the priesthood of all believers cannot be eradicated. It is plausible that Loyola's original insight to transform spiritual exercises from an individual reading to an imagining activity to an activity that is supervised by a director was motivated by his own relations with Alumbrados and his brush with the Spanish Inquisition. Where were we? Yeah, so he wanted these exercises to be for everybody, the whole world, intended from the very beginning not only for people in monastic orders or believers who, like followers of the Devotio Moderna, lived in semi-religious communities, but also for people in the world, including women. Alright, so let's go to this Alumbrادismo right here. Alumbrádismo, meaning illuminated, were the practitioners of a mystical form of Christianity in the Crown of Castile during the 15th and 16th centuries. Some Alumbrados were only mildly heterodox, opinions or doctrines at variance with an official or orthodox position. Under this definition, heterodoxy is similar to unorthodoxy, while the adjective heterodox could be applied to a dissident. But others have views that were clearly heretical, according to the contemporary rulers. Consequently, they were firmly repressed and became some of the early victims of the Spanish Inquisition. Marcelino Menendez y Pizarro found the name as early as 1492, same year Christopher Columbus discovered, well, that's what the history books say anyway, the New World, as it were, in the form Illuminados in 1948. 1948 is very interesting. I'm sorry, that's 1498. I thought it said 1948. Still, this was around Christopher Columbus's expeditions to the New World, Spanish Inquisition times, the conquistadors, Spanish conquest. He traced groups to a Gnostic origin. He thought their views were promoted in Spain through influences from Italy. The Alumbrados held that the human soul can reach such a degree of perfection that it can even, in the present life, contemplate the essence of God and comprehend the mystery of the Trinity. All external worship, they declared, is superfluous, the reception of sacraments useless, and sin impossible in a state of complete union with God. Persons in this state of impeccability could indulge their sexual desires and commit other sinful acts freely without staining their souls. So this term Gnostic right here, this is another one of our terms we're going to look at. But first, let's peek into the history of Ignatius himself. Venerated as Saint Ignatius of Loyola, 1491 to 1556, was a Spanish Catholic priest and theologian who, with 6 companions, founded the religious order of the Society of Jesus. This symbol right here, we're going to discuss what these symbols mean as well. Pretty interesting history behind them. He became the first superior general in Paris in 1541. Ignatius envisioned the purpose of the Society of Jesus to be missionary work and teaching, in addition to the vows of chastity, obedience, and poverty of other religious orders in the Church. Loyola instituted a 4th vow for Jesuits of obedience to the Pope to engage in projects ordained by the Pontiff. Jesuits were instrumental in leading the Counter-Reformation. Foundation of the Jesuit Order. In 1539, with Peter Faber and Francis Xavier, Ignatius formed the Society of Jesus, which was approved in 1540 by Pope Paul III. Pope Paul III was the head of the Catholic Church and ruler of the Papal State from October 1534 to his death in 1549. He was chosen as the first superior general of the order and invested with the title of Father General by the Jesuits. Ignatius sent his companions on missions across Europe to create schools, colleges, and seminaries, something they continue to do to this day. Juan de Vega, Captain and General of Sicily, 1547 to 1557, ambassador of Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. He met Ignatius there, and having formed a good impression of the Jesuits, invited them to travel with him to his new appointment as Viceroy of Sicily. As a result, a Jesuit college was opened in Messina, which proved a success, so that its rules and methods were later copied in subsequent colleges. In a letter to Francis Xavier before his departure to India in 1541, Ignatius famously used the Latin phrase, it inflammate omnia, meaning go set the world on fire, a phrase used in the Jesuit order to this day. With the assistance of his personal secretary, Juan Alfonso de Polanco, a Spanish Jesuit priest from 1547-1556, Ignatius wrote the Jesuit constitutions, which were adopted in 1553. They created a centralized organization of the order and stressed absolute self-denial and obedience to the Pope and to his superiors in the church hierarchy. This was summarized in the motto, "Perende ac cavadir," meaning as if a dead body, meaning that the Jesuits should be emptied of ego as is a corpse. However, overarching Jesuit principles became ad malorum de gloriam, also rendered as the abbreviation AMDG, is the Latin motto of the Society of Jesus in order of the Catholic Church, means for the greater glory of God. Okay, so we know who Ignatius is now. We've looked at Alumbrados. This paper here correlated Alumbrados with the spiritual exercises that Ignatius used to do, and it also mentioned this word Gnostic right here. So we'll take a look at Gnosticism. Ancient Greek, this word, Romanized Gnostikos, having knowledge. That's what it means, is having knowledge. This is one of the themes of Gnosticism as well as Esotericism, is they are big proponents of this secret knowledge. A collection of religious ideas and systems that coalesced in the late 1st century AD among Jewish and early Christian sects. These various groups emphasize personal spiritual knowledge, or gnosis, above the proto-Orthodox teachings, traditions, and authority of religious institutions. Gnostic cosmogony is defined as any model concerning the origin of the cosmos or the universe. Generally presents a distinction between a supreme God and a malevolent lesser divinity, sometimes associated with Yahweh of the Old Testament. He who has ears, let him hear. This is Gnosticism. They put higher gods above lesser gods, and they consider the God of Abraham to be a lesser god, to some hidden god. who is responsible for creating the material universe. Consequently, Gnostics consider material existence flawed or evil and held to the principal element of salvation to be direct knowledge of hidden divinity, attained via mystical or esoteric insight. Many Gnostic texts deal not in concept of sin and repentance, but with illusion and enlightenment. This idea of meditating oneself to an elevated status of gnosis, essentially, knowing secret stuff through thinking a lot. Gnostic writings flourished among certain Christian groups in the Mediterranean world around the 2nd century when the fathers of the early church denounced them as heresy. Efforts to destroy these texts proved largely successful, resulting in the survival of very little writing by Gnostic theologians. Nonetheless, early Gnostic teachers such as Valentinus saw their beliefs as aligned with Christianity. So Valentinus said, this is a lot like Christianity, so we're going to take it and twist it to our own beliefs. Valentinus, most successful early Christian Gnostic theologian, he founded a school in Rome. According to Tertullian, Valentinus was a candidate for bishop but started his own group when another was chosen. So he didn't get the title of bishop, so he went and started his own gathering, his own little group. The Gnostic Christian tradition. In the Gnostic Christian tradition, Christ is seen as a divine being which has taken human form in order to lead humanity back to recognition of its own divine nature. However, Gnosticism is not a single standardized system, and the emphasis on direct experiences allows for a wide variety of teachings, including distinct currents such as Valentinianism, Sethianism, 2nd and 3rd century CE. So this is post-Christ, and this is a fusion of Hellenistic Judaic philosophies that took its influence from Christianity and Middle Platonism. So Platonian Christianity, ancient Greek philosophies, ancient Greek Judaic philosophies that took influence from Christianity and Platoism. That's Sethianism. In the Persian Empire, Gnostic ideas spread as far as China via the related movement Manichaeism and Mandeism. I don't know why it's not showing. Okay. Sometimes also known as Nazareanism or Sabinism, is a Gnostic monotheistic and ethnic religion, and its adherents, the Mandeans, revere Adam, Abel, Seth, Enos, Noah, Shem, Aram, and especially John the Baptist. Which is, while Mandeism, which is the only surviving Gnostic religion from antiquity, is found in Iraq, Iran, and the diaspora communities, one John Buckley posits that the early Mandaeans may have been among the first to formulate what would go on to become Gnosticism within the early Jewish movement. For centuries, most scholarly knowledge about Gnosticism was limited to the anti-heretical writings of early Christian figures, such as Irenaeus of Lyons, Hippolytus of Rome, and there was renewed interest in Gnosticism after the 1945 discovery of Egypt's Nag Hammadi library. This is what I was saying earlier about around 1950s being the middle of the 20th century was a very interesting time because we see a lot of discoveries of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The State of Israel was established under the United Nations, and now we have this Nag Hammadi library, which is a collection of early Christian and Gnostic texts discovered near the Upper Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, including the Gospel of Thomas. So, new interesting Gnosticism in the Nag Hammadi library, a collection of rare early Christian and Gnostic texts, including the Gospel of Thomas, Apocryphon of John, Elaine of Pagels. Oh, that's a new sentence. Never mind. What is this Gospel of Thomas? It's an extra-canonical sayings gospel. It was discovered near Nag Hammadi in Egypt in December 1945 among a group of books known as the Nag Hammadi Library. Scholars speculate that the works were buried in response to a letter from Bishop. We might study that later on. But, where were we? Elaine Pagels has noted the influence of sources from Hellenistic Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and Platonism on the Nag Hammadi text. And since the 1990s, the category of Gnosticism has come under increasing scrutiny from scholars. One such issue is whether Gnosticism ought to be considered one form of early Christianity as interreligious phenomenon or independent religion. Going further than this, other contemporary scholars such as Michael Allen Williams and David G. Robertson contest whether Gnosticism is still a valid, useful, historical category at all, or if it instead was simply a term of art of proto-Orthodox heresiologists for a disparate group of contemporaneous contemporaneous Christian groups. A lot of big words. Alright, what else did I want to see? Let's take a look at this. Jesus is identified by some Gnostics as an embodiment of the Supreme Being who became incarnate to bring Gnosis to the earth, while others adamantly denied the Supreme Being came in the flesh, claiming that Jesus to be merely a human who attained enlightenment through Gnosis and taught his disciples to do the same. Others believed Jesus was divine, although did not have a physical body, reflected in the later Docetist movement. And the Docetist movement is the heterodox doctrine that the phenomenon of Jesus, his historical body and existence, and above all, the human form of Jesus, was mere semblance without any true reality. Blasphemy. That's what this is. Blasphemy. This whole thing. Gnosticism, Esotericism. Now remember, when we first read this, the Catholic Historical Review is saying that the Jesuit order is founded with alumbradismo, whatever this word is, alumbradismo aspects. And we've already seen here, translated to illuminated, Gnostic origins. So what are we looking at here? Relation with early Christianity. Dillon notes that Gnosticism raised questions about the development of early Christianity. The Christian heresiologists, most notably Irenaeus, regarded Gnosticism as a Christian heresy. Modern scholarship notes that early Christianity was diverse, and Christian orthodoxy only settled in the 4th century when the Roman Empire declined and Gnosticism lost its influence. Gnostics and Proto-Orthodox Christians shared some terminology. Initially, they were hard to distinguish from each other. According to Walter Bauer, heresies may well have been the original form of Christianity in many regions. This theme was further developed by Elaine Pagels, who argues that the Proto-Orthodox Church found itself in debates with Gnostic Christians that helped them stabilize their own beliefs. According to Giles Quispel, Catholicism arose in response to Gnosticism, established some safeguards in the form of monarch episcopate, hierarchical form of church governance in which the chief local authorities are called bishops, and is the structure used by many of the major Christian churches and denominations such as the Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, Church of the East, Anglican, among others. The Creed, also known as a confession of faith, a symbol or statement of faith, is a statement in the shared beliefs of a community in form of which structures about subjects which summarize its core tenets. And the canon of holy books. Biblical canon, we know what that is. Let's see. Oh, Paul and Gnosticism. All right, we're gonna read historical Jesus, and we're gonna read Paul and Gnosticism, and then we're gonna. Oh man. Yeah. For the interest of time, you can come back and read this for yourself. I just wanted to. I put all this here. I compiled everything just to give you like a crash course in what all this stuff is. I didn't, 4 or 5 months ago, I didn't know what any of this was. I saw it in the news and TV and movies and music and all this. I heard buzzwords and phrases and, join the movement type woo-woo. And it started making me wonder, so what is all this? And this is what I've come up with in my research. So, very brief. I don't want to. It's already been 30 minutes, so we still got a lot to do. So let's keep going. Jesus as Gnostic Savior. Jesus is identified by some Gnostics as an embodiment of the Supreme Being who became incarnate to bring Gnosis to the earth, while others adamantly deny that this Supreme Being came in the flesh, claiming Jesus to be merely a human who attained enlightenment through the Gnosis and taught his disciples the same. We've already read this. Others believe that Jesus was divine and did not have a physical body, reflected in the Docetist movement. The Mandeans, Jesus was considered Kadaba, or false Messiah, who perverted the teachings entrusted to him by John the Baptist. Still, other traditions identify Mani, Iranian prophet and the founder of Manichaeism, religion most prevalent in late antiquity, and Seth, third son of Adam and Eve, as salvific figures. Alright, let's look at development real quick. 3 periods can be discerned in the development of Gnosticism. Late 1st century and early 2nd century development of Gnostic ideas contemporaneous with the writings of the New Testament. Mid 2nd century to early 3rd century, high point of the classical Gnostic teachers and their systems, who claimed that their systems represented the inner truth revealed by Jesus. And into the 2nd century to the 4th century, reaction by the Proto-Orthodox Church and condemnation as heresy and subsequent decline. During the first period, 3 types of tradition developed. Genesis was reinterpreted in Jewish Mileus, viewing Yahweh as a jealous God who enslaved people. Freedom was to be obtained from this jealous God. A wisdom tradition developed in which Jesus' sayings were interpreted as pointers to an esoteric wisdom in which the soul would be divinized through conflicts described in 1 Corinthians, may have been inspired by a clash between this wisdom tradition and Paul's gospel of crucifixion and arising. You know, when they say deceiving even the elect, you know, when the Bible says it to deceive even the very elect, this is what they mean. A wisdom tradition developed in which Jesus' sayings were interpreted as pointers to an esoteric wisdom in which the soul could be divinized through identification with wisdom. Some of Jesus' sayings may have been incorporated to the Gospels to put a limit on this development. The conflicts described in 1 Corinthians may be inspired by a clash between this wisdom tradition and Paul's gospel of crucifixion and arising. Ecclesiastes, vanity, you know. A mythical story developed about the descent of a heavenly creature to reveal the divine world as the true home of human beings. Jewish Christianity saw the Messiah or Christ as an eternal aspect of God's hidden nature, his spirit and truth, who revealed himself through sacred history. The movement spread in areas controlled by the Roman Empire and the Aryan Goths, and the Persian Empire. It continued to develop in the Mediterranean and Middle East before and during the 2nd and 3rd centuries, but decline also set in during the 3rd century due to a growing aversion from the Nicene Church and the economic and cultural deterioration of the Roman Empire. What year was the 2nd and 3rd century? Yeah, so the adoption of Christianity as the state church in 380 and the fall of Western Roman Empire. So let me take a look at this real quick. Where's the fall at? Holy Roman Empire was established in 800 when Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne as Roman Empire. Orthodox Christian, Byzantine Empire's Orthodox Christian tradition counted itself the third Rome, Constantinople having been the second. That was around 800. Alright. Christianity emerged in Roman Judea as a Jewish religious sect. Roman Judea is the place where the state of Israel is currently, right in here. Jewish religious sect in the 1st century and gradually spread out to Jerusalem throughout the empire beyond. Imperially authorized persecutions were limited and sporadic, with martyrdoms occurring most often under the authority of local officials. Tacitus reports that after the Great Fire of Rome in AD 64, the emperor attempted to deflect blame from himself onto the Christians. A major persecution occurred under the Emperor Domitian, and a persecution in 177 took place in Lugdunum, the Gallo-Roman religious capital. A letter from Pliny the Younger, governor of Bithynia, describes his persecution and execution of Christians. The Decian persecution of 246-251 seriously threatened the church, but ultimately strengthened Christian defiance. Diocletian undertook the most severe persecution of Christians from 303 to 311. I wanted to see when the fall of Rome was. I'm pretty sure it's... yeah. Sack of Rome 410. Death of Julius Nepos in 480. By the 300s, barbarian groups like the Goths had encroached beyond the empire's borders. Visigoth king Elaric successfully sacked the city of Rome in 410. The fall of Rome was completed in 476, when the German chieftain Odoacer deposed the last Roman empire of the West, Romulus Augustulus. Alright, we're getting off topic. I just wanted to check that out real quick. Alright. Yeah, here's the Goths again. They're Arian Goths. Arianism is a Christological doctrine first attributed to Arius, a Christian presbyter from Alexandria, Egypt. Arian theology holds that Jesus Christ is the only human man prophet of God made by Allah. Therefore, Jesus was not co-eternal with God the Father, but nonetheless Jesus began it. Yeah, more blasphemy. Movement spread in areas controlled by the Roman Empire and the Arian Goths, and the Persian Empire. Continued to develop in the Mediterranean and Middle East before and during the 2nd and 3rd centuries, but also we've already read this. Conversion to Islam and the Albigensian Crusade greatly reduced the remaining number of Gnostics throughout the Middle Ages. Through Mandean communities, though Mandean communities still exist in Iraq, Iran, and diaspora communities, Gnostic and pseudo-Gnostic ideas became influential in some of the philosophies of various esoteric mystical movements of the 19th and 20th centuries in Europe and North America. So that's again, this is around the time when Israel became a state. They found the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi in Egypt, Han Nag Hammadi or whatever it is, the Nag Hammadi library. A lot of stuff happened in the 20th century, mid-20th century. Including some that explicitly identify themselves as revivals or even continuations of earlier Gnostic groups. Okay, so that's Gnosticism. Let's move on to Esotericism, specifically Western Esotericism, because that's where we are. Let's see. Sometimes known as the Western Mystery Tradition, is a term scholars use to categorize a wide range of loosely related. Turn that down. Loosely related ideas and movements that develop within Western society. These ideas and currents are united since they are largely distinct from both Orthodox and Judeo-Christian religion and Enlightenment rationalism. Esotericism has pervaded various forms of Western philosophy, mysticism and religion, pseudoscience, art, literature, as well as music, and continues to influence intellectual ideas and pop culture. The idea of grouping a wide range of Western traditions and philosophies together under the term esotericism developed in Europe during the late 17th century. Various academics have debated various definitions of Western esotericism. One view adopts a definition from a certain esotericist schools of thought themselves, treating esotericism as a perennial, hidden inner tradition. A second perspective sees esotericism as a category of movements that embrace the enchanted worldview of in the face of increasing disenchantment. A third views Western esotericism as an encompassing of all Western culture's rejected knowledge that is accepted neither by scientific establishment nor Orthodox religious authorities. Let's see. Earliest traditions that later analysis labeled as forms of Western esotericism emerged in the Eastern Mediterranean during late antiquity, 3rd through 7th century in Europe. So this was around the fall of Rome and thereafter. Hermeticism, philosophical and religious system based on the purported teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. These teachings are contained in the various writings attributed to Hermes, which were produced over a period spanning many centuries. Gnosticism, Neo-Pythagoreanism, Hellenistic and Roman philosophy which revived Pythagorean doctrines. Neo-Pythagoreanism was influenced by Middle Platonism. We just read that under Gnosticism as well. Originated in the 1st century BC. Neoplatonism, once again, developed as schools of thought distinct from what became mainstream Christianity. Renaissance Europe saw increased interest in many of these older ideas, with various intellectuals combining pagan philosophies with the Kabbalah and Christian philosophy, resulting in the emergence of esoteric movements like Christian Kabbalah and Christian Theosophy. Theosophy is another one we're going to go over. Also known as Bohemian Theosophy, refers to a range of positions within Christianity that focus on attainment of direct, unmediated knowledge of the nature of divinity and the origin and purpose of the universe. Very interesting that one is, isn't it? The 17th century saw the development of initiatory societies professing esoteric knowledge, such as Rosicrucianism. Interesting. A spiritual and cultural movement that arose in Europe in the early 17th century after the publication of several texts announcing to the world that a new esoteric order, Rosicrucianism, is symbolized by the Rosy Cross or the Rose Cross. Okay. I've heard of this, but I missed this one when I was going over a review. Rosy Cross. Symbol that largely associated with the legendary Christian Rosenkreutz, Christian Kabbalists, alchemists, and founder of the Rosicrucian order. The Rose Cross is a cross with a rose at its center, often red, golden, or white, symbolizes teachings of Western esotericism, probably. The Fama Fraternitatis Rosicrucis, an anonymous Rosicrucian manifesto published in 1614 in Kassel, Hesse-Kassel, 1652, Thomas Vaughan. Johannes Valentinus Andreae, German theologian who claimed to be the author of an ancient text known as the Chemische Hochzeit Christiani Rosenkreutz Anno. What is this? Hold on, let me translate this. Chemic wedding. That's the best you can do? Alright. That didn't really help me. What is chemic? Are they talking about chemistry? Chemical? Alchemy? What are we looking at here? Chemical wedding of Christian. There it is right there. Became one of the three founding works of Rosicrucianism, which was both a legend and fashionable cultural phenomenon across Europe and its period. Alright, I don't care about him anymore. So, a literal reading narrates the travels and education of Father Brother CRC, and his founding of a secret brotherhood of similarly prepared men. Names, numbers, and other details have Kabbalistic allusions in which the cognoscenti of that era were well versed. The Confessio Fraternitatis, the Confession of the Brotherhood of RC, probably stands for Rosicrucianism, published in Frankfurt in 1615, responded to confusions and criticisms and elaborated the matter further. Origins. 3 anonymous manifestos, 1614 through 1617, published in Germany and soon after throughout Europe. Presents the legend of a German doctor and mystic philosopher referred to as Father Brother CRC, later identified in a third manifesto as Christian Rosenkreutz, or Red Cross. The year 1378 is presented as being the birth year of our Christian father, and is stated that he lived 106 years. After studying in the Middle East under various masters, possibly adhering to Sufism, mystic body of religious practice found within Islam, he was unable to spread the knowledge how he had acquired to prominent European scientists and philosophers. He was unable to spread the knowledge he had acquired to prominent European scientists and philosophers. Instead, he gathered a small circle of friends and disciples and founded the Rosicrucian order around 1407. Masonic rites emerged toward the end of the 18th century. Scottish Rite. Look, that star right there. We're going to look at that too. Rectified Scottish Rite, also known as the Order of Knights Beneficent of the Holy City, or Knights Benefactor of the Holy City, is a Christian Masonic rite founded in Lyon, France in 1778. Yeah, here we go. These symbols here, these are ancient symbols. So that you got a snake going around this Star of David, which really predates Judaism. It actually takes roots in India with Hinduism and stuff. And this cross right here, this comes from ancient Egypt. It's known as the Ankh, which is this teardrop thing right here with the cross. Here, yeah, this cross right here. You got this Star of David right here. Of course, you can probably guess what this is. That's a swastika. And this right here, I think this is called an Eye of Horus. And then there's that pyramid on the back of a dollar and the infinity symbol. But this right here, next time you pass by an ambulance, look at this. This is a symbol of a Greek god of medicine. And then, of course, you have these solar symbols, which is, this sunburst depiction here. Solar symbol representing the sun, of course. Common solar symbols include circles, with or without rays, crosses and spirals. In religious iconography, personifications of the sun or solar attributes are often indicated by means of a halo or radiate crown. Max Mueller right here. When the systematic study of comparative mythology first became popular in the 19th century, scholarly opinion tended to over-interpret historical myths and iconography in terms of solar symbolism. This was especially in the case with Max Mueller, a German-born philologist and Orientalist who lived and studied in Britain for most of his life. He was one of the founders of Western academic disciplines of Indian studies and religious studies. He was a big proponent in the Gnostic and Esotericism, the New Age stuff. Many solar symbols claimed by the 19th century, such as the swastika, triskele, sun cross, etc., have tended to be interpreted more conservatively in scholarship since the later 20th century. Sunburst, which is this thing right here. That's the name of this circle with the wavy lines on it. Uh-oh. I didn't mean to delete that. Where was I? Okay. Sunburst was the badge of King Edward III of England, 1377, and has thus become a badge of office in Windsor Herald. Heraldic badge, emblem, impressa, device, or personal device worn as a badge indicates allegiance to, property of, an individual, family, or corporate body. Their medieval forms are usually called the livery badge and also cognizance. Yeah, see? Look. Windsor Herald of Arms and Ordnances, an officer of arms at the College of Arms in London. Here's the crosses. Sun cross. Often considered to represent the 4 seasons in the tropical year, and therefore the sun, though as an astronomical symbol it represents the Earth. In the prehistoric region of Bronze Age Europe, crosses and circles appear frequently on artifacts identified as cult items. An example from the Nordic Bronze Age is the miniature standard with amber inlay, revealing a cross shape when held against the light. National Museum of Denmark. Bronze Age symbol has also been connected with the spoke chariot wheel, which at the time was 4-spoked compared to linear B, whatever that is. Sun chariot celebration. The wheel may thus have had a solar connotation. The swastika has been a long-standing symbol of good fortune in Eurasian cultures and is appropriation by the Nazi Party from 1920 to 1945 is a brief moment in history. It may be derived from the sun cross and is another solar symbol in some contexts. It is used among Buddhists, the Jains, and Hindus, and many other cultures, though not necessarily as solar symbols. The black sun is a sun wheel with 12-fold rotational symmetry. The design was incorporated as a mosaic into a floor of Wewelsburg Castle during the Nazi era, and may have been inspired by the Alemannic Iron Age swastika-like designs in migration period Zierscheiben. It has been adopted by modern Satanist groups and neo-Nazis. The Kolowrat, or Polish, represents the sun in Slavic neo-paganism. Modern pagan religion, classified as a new religious movement. There it is, new religion, new age. Practitioner harken back to the historical beliefs of the Slavic peoples. So a lot of what this new age stuff is, from what I've seen, is a rebirth or a readoption of old dead religions. They're just calling new. And a lot of people don't even know the origins or the history or what they signify. They're so pervasive in our modern literature. You go to a bookstore, go to Books A Million, and there's an entire section on New Age. Just book after book of woo-woo. So here's some flags here that depict the sun in several countries. So yeah, let's look at the Star of David, which isn't. I'm over an hour right now, so hexagram, is this it? Yeah. Rectangular hexagram. A hexagram, Greek, or sexagram, Latin, is a six-pointed geometric star figure with the Schlafly symbol. Yeah, I don't care about the math. Here we go. Origins. As a derivative of two overlapping triangles, the hexagram may have developed from different peoples with no direct correlation to one another. The oldest known depiction of a six-pointed star dating back to the 3rd millennium BC was excavated in the Ashtarak burial mound in the Nurkin Navir in historic Armenia. The mandala symbol, called yantra, found in ancient South Indian Hindu temples, is a geometric tool set that incorporates hexagrams into its framework. It symbolizes as the Narayana, or perfect meditative state of balance between man and God, and if manifested, results in moksha or nirvana. Nirvana is a concept in Indian religions that represents the ultimate state of soteriological release, the liberation from dukkha, suffering, and samsara, release from the bounds of earthly world and its material trappings. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Jain Dharma, Indian religion, traces spiritual ideas and history through the succession of 24 Tirthankaras. I can't say these words. The reasons behind the symbol's common appearance in Indic religions and the West are unknown. One possibility is that they have a common origin, other than the possibility that artists and religious people from several cultures independently created the hexagram shape, which is a relatively simple geometric design. Let's see. The Tibetan Book of the Dead contains a hexagram with a swastika inside. Hindu yantra represents male and feminine. There's that cross with a circle on it again. It's not quite the same shape though. It's a female symbol. Here we go, Judaism. The Magen David, generally recognized symbol of Judaism and Jewish identity, and also known colloquially as the Jewish Star or Star of David. Usage is a sign of Jewish identity, began in the Middle Ages, though its religious usage began either with the current earliest archaeological evidence being a stone bearing the shield from the arch of a 3rd to 4th century synagogue in the Galilee. The first and the most important Armenian cathedral of Echmiadzin, 303 after death, built by the founder of Christianity in Armenia. We just read that the oldest version of it came from Armenia, right? Yeah. The oldest known depiction of a six-pointed star dating back to the 3rd millennium BC was excavated in the Ashtarak burial mound in Nurkin Navir, historic Armenia. And if I'm not mistaken, Yeah. Armenia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and then you have Iran down here. So it's like north of Iran. That is where we first see the hexagram in historic Armenia. American neighbor. Decorated with many types of ornamented hexagrams, and so is the tomb of an Armenian prince of the Hassan Jalalian dynasty of Chechen, 1214 AD, in the Gandzazar Church of Artsakh. The hexagram may be found in some churches and stained glass windows. In Christianity, it is sometimes called the Star of Creation. A very early example, noted by Nicolaus Pevsner, can be found in Winchester Cathedral, England, in one of the canopies of the choir stalls, circa 1308. Mormons, Islam, Seal of Solomon, Najmat Dawood, Star of David. Seal of Solomon may be represented by a 5-point star or a pentagram. In the Quran, it is written that David and King Solomon were prophets and kings and are figures revered by Muslims. The medieval pre-Ottoman Hanafi Anatolian Beyliks of the Karamanids and Jandarid used the star on their flag. The symbol also used in Hayreddin Barbarossa flag. Today's star can be found on mosques and on other Arabic and Islamic artifacts. Usage in Theosophy and Occultism. Star of David is used in the seal and the emblem of the Theosophical Society. Right here. Look, that's that, that's this right here. Where was it? Where am I at? Here we go. Theosophical Society is the organizational body of Theosophy and esoteric new religious movement. It was founded in New York City in 1875. Among its founders were Helena Blavatsky, a Russian mystic and the principal thinker of the Theosophy movement, as well as Henry Steele Alcott. Draws upon a wide array of influences. Have we read about Christian Theosophy yet? A little bit? Maybe not. Well, this is good because we can learn a lot right here. The original organization after splits and realignments currently has several successors following the death of Blavatsky, who, she's a Russian mystic back in the 1800s. Let's go back to this. Theosophical Society was formed in New York City, 1875. Yeah, we know. An uncertain body of seekers after truth who endeavored to promote brotherhood and strive to serve humanity. Alcott was its first president and remained president until his death in 1907. In the early months of 1875, Alcott and Judge had to come to realize that if Blavatsky was a spiritualist, she was no ordinary one. The society's initial objective was the study and elucidation of occultism, the Kabbalah, etc. After a few years, Alcott Blavatsky moved to India and established the international headquarters at Adair in Madras. They were also interested in studying Eastern religions, and these were included in the society's agenda. After several iterations of the society's objectives were incorporated. This is hard to read. I'm not even remotely interested in Theosophy. Hidden Masters. One of the central philosophical tenets promoted by the society was the complex doctrine of the intelligent evolution of all existence, occurring on a cosmic scale, and incorporating both the physical and non-physical aspects of the known and unknown universe, and affecting all of its constituent parts regardless of apparent size or importance. The theory was originally promulgated in the Secret Doctrine. This was a pseudoscientific esoteric book originally published as 2 volumes in 1888, written by Helena Blavatsky. Cosmogenesis and Anthropogenesis, her magnum opus of Helena Blavatsky. According to this view, humanity's evolution on Earth and beyond is part of the overall cosmic evolution. It is overseen by a hidden spiritual hierarchy known the so-called masters of the ancient wisdom, whose upper echelons consisted of advanced spiritual beings. Blavatsky portrayed the Theosophical Society as being part of one of many attempts throughout the millennia by its hidden hierarchy to guide humanity in concert with the overall intelligent cosmic evolutionary scheme, towards its ultimate immutable evolutionary objective, the attainment of perfection and the conscious willing participation in the evolutionary process. These attempts require an earthly infrastructure such as the Theosophical Society, which she held was ultimately under the inspiration of a number of Mahatmas, or members of the hierarchy. It's an Indian word, honorific, used in India. Honorific members of the hierarchy. Schisms. World teacher. Again, you can go through and read a lot of this yourself. Let's see, Christian Theosophy. Alright, an hour and 15 minutes. Bohemian Theosophy refers to a range of positions within Christianity that focus on the attainment of direct, unmediated knowledge of the nature of divinity and the origin and purpose of the universe, characterized by mystical philosophies. Theosophy is considered part of Western Esotericism, which believes that hidden knowledge of wisdom from the ancient past offers a path to enlightenment and salvation. While general Theosophy concerns the universal aspects of diverse esoteric traditions, including Hinduism and Buddhism, Christian Theosophy is limited to Jewish and Christian elements. The foundation of Christian Theosophy is usually attributed to the German philosopher Jacob Boehme. Jewish Kabbalah was also formative for Christian Theosophy from Boehme on. Boehme. In 1875, the term Theosophy was adopted and revived by the Theosophical Society, an esoteric organization that spawned a spiritual movement called Theosophy. That was what we were just reading about with Blavatsky. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Christian Theosophy and Pietism, which is a movement within the Lutheranism that combines its emphasis on biblical doctrine with an emphasis on individual piety and living a holy Christian arose in response to the orthodoxy of the Lutheran Reformation and a major event from history. Are they talking about Protestant Reformation? Yeah. Christian Theosophy and Pietism arose in response to the orthodoxy of the Lutheran Reformation. Alright. The work of the 17th century German Christian mystic, Jacob Boehme, strongly contributed to spread the use of the word Theosophy, even though Boehme rarely used the word in his writings. It is on account of the titles of some of his works, but these titles appear to have been chosen more by the editors than by Boehme himself. Moreover, Boehme gave the word Theosophy a limited meaning, making it clear that he was not conflating nature with God. Work has been described as foundational for Christian Theosophy. There were relatively few theosophers in the 17th century, but many of them were prolific. Outside of Germany, there were also theosophers from Holland, England, and France. This group is represented by Jan Baptist van Helmont, Robert Flood, John Portage, Jane Lead, Henry Moore, Pierre Pourret, Henry Moore, English philosopher of the Cambridge Platonist School, French mystic Pierre Pourret Naude, alright, and Antoinette Brignon de la Porte was a French-Flemish mystic and adventurer. She taught that the end times would come soon and the last judgment would then fall. Her belief was that she was chosen by God to restore true Christianity on earth and became a central figure of a spiritual network that extended beyond the borders of the Dutch Republic. According to Holstein and Scotland, Bourguignon's sect belonged to the spiritualist movements that have been characterized as the third power. Alchemy, astrology, Neo-Alexandrian, Hermeticism, Christian Kabbalah arose during the Renaissance due to Christian scholars interested in the mysticism of Jewish Kabbalah, which they interpreted according to Christian theology, often transliterated as Kabbalah with a C to distinguish it from the Jewish form and from Hermetic Kabbalah. Kabbalah. I might make a part 2. I didn't get to everything that I wanted to, but my voice hurts, and there's a few more things to look at. I wanted to go over the Christogram. So this one right here, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, they have this IHS in the middle of it. Now we go over here to Christogram, go down to IHS, and it says, in the Latin-speaking Christianity of medieval Western Europe, and so among Catholics and many Protestants today, the most common Christogram became IHS or IHC, denoting the first 3 letters of the Greek name of Jesus, whatever these letters are here. I mean, that's obviously an IH, but it takes 4 letters to make an S. Iota, Eta, Sigma. Iota is the 9th letter of the Greek alphabet. It was derived from the Phoenician letter Yod. Letters that arose from this letter include the Latin I and J, and the Cyrillic I, Yi, and Ye. Eta is the 7th letter of the Greek alphabet, representing the close front unrounded vowel, IPA. I or H. Voiceless, glottal, fricative? I don't know. Sigma is the 18th letter of the Greek alphabet. In the system of Greek numerals, it has a value of 200. In Greek general mathematics, uppercase, whatever letter that is, E, is used as an operator for summation. I don't know. The Greek letter iota is represented by I, the Eta by H, while the Greek letter sigma is either in its lunate form, represented by C, or its final form, represented by S. Because the Latin alphabet letters I and J were not systematically distinguished until the 17th century, JHS and JHC are equivalent to IHS and IHC. IHS sometimes interpreted as meaning whatever this is, translated in English to Jesus our Savior, or in Latin, Jesus hominum, Jesus Savior of men, or Jerusalem in Latin, or connected with in hoc signo, Latin phrase conventionally translated into English as in this sign thou shalt conquer. Wait. Hold on. Let me read this again. IHS is sometimes interpreted as meaning this is Iesus Hemeteros Soter, Jesus our Savior, or in Latin, Jesus hominum, Hero Soliame, Salvator, Jesus Savior of men or of Jerusalem in Latin, or connected with in hoc signo, in this sign thou shalt conquer. A phrase conventionally translated to English as in this sign thou shalt conquer, also being translated by this sign conquer. The Latin phrase itself renders rather loosely the Greek phrase in this conquer. Lucius, Salius, Firminius, Lactantius was an early Christian author who became an advisor to 240 to 320. Early Christian author became advisor of first Christian Roman Emperor Constantine and tutor to his son, guiding the emperor's religious policy as it developed during his reign. His work, De Mortibus Persecutorum, has an apologetic character, but has been treated as a work of history by Christian writers. Here, Lactantius preserves the story of Constantine's vision of Chi-Rho before his conversion to Christianity. Look, there's that sign right there, Christogram. What is this right here? Chi-Rho. One of the earliest forms of Christogram, formed by superimposing the first two capital letters Chi and Rho in such a way that the vertical stroke to the Rho intersects the center of the Chi. The Chi-Rho symbol was used by the Roman Emperor Constantine as part of a military standard. Constantine's standard was known as Liberum. Early symbols similar to Chi-Rho were the staurogram and the IX monogram. Well, that's a six-sided star too. Or maybe something of a sun or something like that. I don't know. The IX monogram form a combination of the letter I or iota for Jesus in Greek and X or Chi for Christos, Christ in Greek. The spokes can also be standalone without the circle. These monograms can often be found as ancient burial inscriptions. The bishop Eusebius of Caesarea, a historian, states that Constantine was marching with his army. Does not specify the actual location of the event, but is clearly not in the camp at Rome, when he looked up to the sun and saw a cross of light above it, and with the Greek words, "in this conquer," a phrase often rendered into Latin as "in this sign you will conquer." At first, Constantine did not know the meaning of the apparition, but on the following night he had a dream in which Christ explained to him that he should use the sign of the cross against his enemies. Eusebius then continues to describe the Liberum, the military standard used by Constantine in his later wars against Licinius. These accounts by Lactantius and Eusebius, though not entirely consistent, have been connected to the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, 1312, merging into a popular notion of Constantine seeing the Chi-Rho sign on the evening before the battle. Interesting. The phrase appears prominently in place as a motto on a ribbon unfurled with a passion cross to its left, beneath a window over the Scala Regia, adjacent to the equestrian statue of Emperor Constantine in the Vatican. Emperors and other monarchs, having paid respects to the Pope, descend the Scala Regia and would observe the light shining down through the window with the motto reminiscent of Constantine's vision, and be reminded to follow the cross. Alright. What are we missing here? Ancient Mesopotamian religion. Modern study of Mesopotamia is still a fairly young science, beginning only in the middle of the 19th century. The study of Mesopotamian religion can be a complex and difficult subject because by nature their religion was governed only by usage, not by any official decision, and by nature it was neither dogmatic nor systematic. Deities, characters, and their actions within myths changed in character and importance over time, and occasionally depicted different, sometimes even contrasting images or concepts. This is further complicated by the fact that scholars are not entirely certain what role religious texts played in the Mesopotamian world. For many decades, some scholars of the ancient Near East argued that it was impossible to define there as being a singular Mesopotamian religion, with Leo Oppenheim, 1964, stating that a systematic presentation of the Mesopotamian religion cannot and should not be written. A systematic presentation of Mesopotamia cannot and should not be written. Others like Jean Botero The author of Religion in Ancient Mesopotamia disagreed, believing that it would be too complicated to divide the religion into many smaller groups, stating that should we dwell on a certain social or cultural category, the official religion, the private religion, or the religion of the educated. So they're separating it here. You've got an official religion and a private religion for the educated. I guess the private religion is hidden from the official religion. Should we emphasize a certain city or province? Should we concentrate on a certain period in time, the Seleucid or the Achaemenid, Chaldean, or Neo-Assyrian, or the Old Babylonian, Neo-Sumerian, or Old Akkadian period? There were no distinct religions, but only successive states of the same religious system. Such an approach would be excessive, even pointless. Flood myths appear in almost every culture around the world, including cultures that never had contact with Mesopotamia. The fundamental tenets of Pan-Babylonianism were eventually dismissed as pseudoscientific. However, Assyriologists and biblical scholars recognize the influence of Babylonian mythology on Jewish mythology and other Near Eastern mythologies, albeit indirect. Indeed, similarities between both religious traditions may draw from even older sources. In the New Testament book of Revelation, Babylonian religion is associated with the religious apostasy of the lowest order. The archetype of political religious system heavily tied to global commerce, it is depicted as a system in which, according to the author, continued to hold sway in the 1st century CE, eventually to be utterly annihilated. According to some interpretations, it is believed to refer to the Roman Empire, but according to interpretations, this system remains extant in the world until the Second Coming. Romans 17:5, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abomination of the earth. Revelations 18:9, the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her, for when they see smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, of the great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment is come, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth her merchandise any more. Mesopotamian religion, culture, history, and mythology has influenced some forms of music, as well as traditional Syriac folk music. Many heavy metal bands have named themselves after Mesopotamian gods and historical figures, including the partly Assyrian band Melchizedek. Black metal band that originated in Jerusalem and is currently based in Amsterdam. Drummer named Lord Curse. Various new religious movements in the 20th and 21st centuries have been founded that venerate some of the deities found in ancient Mesopotamia, including various strains of neo-paganism, and have adopted worship in the history of Mesopotamian gods. Neo-paganism goes back to that Gnosticism and esoteric stuff with this New Age religious movement. Polytheism, animism, pantheism, Wicca, Druidry, witchcraft, heathenry, Hellenism. So, yeah, this is New Age Meditation, 1992. Yep. A lot of tie-dye stuff. New Age is a range of spiritual or religious practices and beliefs which rapidly grew in Western society during the early 70s. Highly eclectic and unsystematic structure makes it its precise definition difficult. Although many scholars consider it a religious movement, its adherents typically see it as a spiritual or as a unifying mind, body, spirit, and rarely use the term New Age themselves. Scholars often call it the New Age movement, although others contest that this term and suggests it better seen as a milieu or zeitgeist. As a form of Western esotericism, the New Age drew heavily upon esoteric traditions such as the occultism of the 18th and 19th centuries, including the work of Emanuel Swedenborg and Franz Mesmer, as well as Spiritualism, New Thought, and Theosophy. So here we go again. We've got Theosophy, Western Esotericism, New Age, but it's the same old stuff. Same old stuff. Look, we even got UFO religions. You got the news right now where they're talking about these unidentified flying objects, and we need better reporting for the Tic Tacs and all that. Yeah. Anyway, Emanuel Swedenborg was a Swedish pluralistic Christian theologian, scientist, philosopher, mystic. He became best known for his book on the afterlife, Heaven and Hell, 1758. For your light reading pleasure. Franz Mesmer. He lived to be 80. It's pretty good for the 1800s. Physician with an interest in astronomy. He theorized the existence of a natural energy transference occurring between all animated and inanimate objects. This he calls the animal magnetism, sometimes later referred to as mesmerism. Mesmer's theory attracted a wide following between 1780 and 1850 and continued to have some influence until the end of the 19th century. In 1843, the Scottish doctor James Braid proposed the term hypnotism for a technique derived from the animal magnetism. Today, the word mesmerism generally functions as a synonym for hypnosis. Mesmer also supports the arts, specifically music. He was on friendly terms with Haydn and Mozart. So here's where you get your hypnotism from. Mesmer. I've heard of him. Angels and masters, accompanied by a common belief that a variety of semi-divine, non-human entities such as angels and masters with whom humans can communicate. I've seen people on YouTube talking about these, talking to these angels and stuff. They hear voices from angels. Typically viewing history as divided into spiritual ages as a common New Age belief and a forgotten age of great technological advancement and spiritual wisdom, declining into periods of increasing violence and spiritual degeneracy, which will now be remedied by the emergence of Age of Aquarius, from which the milieu gets its name. Yeah. Forgotten age, great technological advancement. That's what that Atlantis is, the lost city of Atlantis, where some people claim that they had super technology to go to the stars and all that. Alright, that's all I got.